introduction of the Healthy Congregations program. I am now going to turn it over to Ian from the Good Neighbor Experiment so he can talk about FAN. Like I said, this is one of our newest special grant opportunities that we're offering, and we're really excited about it because I think it's just a perfect time to be involved in a program like this. If you are passionate about neighboring, about like building connections and being intentional, this is the program for you. And so I'll hand it over to Ian for him to just tell you guys more about it. And we will have question and answers at the end. But like again, if you guys want to talk through it, I'm sure Ian wouldn't mind. Just let us know in the chat box and we can answer questions as we go, whatever works for you all. And yeah, so thank you. So I'll hand it over to Ian.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dashanika. That was a really helpful kind of framing to put this all in. And I appreciate all the awesome information you shared about healthy congregations. Yeah, it's exciting to say that, really we are offering churches, unlike some of the programs in the past, like these are not programs that we're charging for, like these are benefits that your church can take advantage of. So really excited to be able to share that with you. I want to welcome Amanda and Carrie. I'm glad y'all are here, and I'll involve y'all in a question here in just a second as I pull up my screen. Okay, can y'all see this? Okay, perfect. Okay, well, so yes, I just want to start off with a little just kind of interactive question. We love to do super interactive things with the neighboring movement. Today is more informational, so I will be doing a lot of talking from my computer, but just wanted to give you a chance to think about this question, and maybe you can unmute your mic and give me your thoughts there. So what about neighboring most excites you? And you can say that individually and for your church. Anybody want to chime in?
I apologize that I can't get my name changed to say Amanda. Ross is my husband, but we share a computer, so at home. But neighboring for us has made a huge difference in the lives of our kids. It has allowed us to build a village for our family in some of the places that we have lived. We're in kind of a weird place where we're back to not really knowing very many of our neighbors because we have moved to Emporia. But in the last two communities that we have lived in, our ability to build a village that looks out for our kids, that gives them a sense of community and what it looks like to do that give and take has been really huge. And it's something that we have really come to value as a family.
Oh, that's so awesome, Amanda. I'm a product of a very similar kind of village environment, and like every day I'm so grateful to my parents for kind of helping facilitate that. And that was often through lots of probably very awkward early conversations with neighbors that eventually turned into something really special. And so I'm sure that your kids are grateful for that as well, and will be ever more so as the time goes on. So very, very cool. I appreciate that, Amanda. Um, Carrie, do you want to share? And Renita, you're welcome to type in the chat as well your thoughts.
Hi there, this is Carrie. I'm actually new to all of this that you're talking about today. Just in practical terms, as a neighbor, I do appreciate building relationships with my neighbors and knowing who's around and who's watching out for you. And not knowing too much, but I know my own neighbors, if we look like we might be gone or something, or a trash can's out for several days, they'll text and say something. So just that concept of what Amanda said about building a village and having a group around you, a positive group like that, is beneficial in more ways than I can probably even think of right now.
That's awesome. Yeah, having the eyes on the street can be huge. And so I appreciate your input as well. Okay, let me just get into this presentation. you're new to this, we are all we're new to talking about this program in this way. This is actually a pretty new program that we're bringing to you today. But this picture here is our first group of faith-based animators. This was this past summer. This cohort started in I believe it was like June, I think, and finished in September. So it was a lot of fun and really has me like super passionate about the future of this program. I'll just give a little bit of an intro to the neighboring movement itself, the organization that, in partnership with Healthy Congregations, United Methodist Health Ministries Fund, in partnership with them, the neighboring movement is rolling out this program. So the neighboring movement is a nonprofit here in Wichita that's been around since 2015. I am entering my third year as the faith-based program director here, which is really hard to believe. It's been a good 3 years. And so I'm really excited to be a part of this mission, which is to nurture a culture-changing movement by discovering, connecting, and mobilizing the gifts of neighbors. And so that gifts focus is our big thing. We use the principles of asset-based community development, and we practice that in our neighborhood and help people practice it in their neighborhoods. We do it in churches, and we really see ourselves as a movement that's well beyond the scope of even what we're doing. There's lots of people practicing neighboring that we're trying to learn from and share with. Let's see. You're welcome to, continue to share stuff in the chat. And I appreciate your thoughts, Renita. Okay, so what is the Faith-Based Animator Network? So we call it FAN, and it's a paid learning cohort. So we're specifically tailoring this for people who are passionate about finding God already at work through the abundant gifts of their neighbors. And so we call these people that are on this great treasure hunt for the gifts of their neighbors and for where God's at work. We call them animators, and they embark on a 14-week deep dive into neighboring and ABCD. So that's that asset-based community development term I just mentioned, from a faith perspective, becoming weavers of their community tapestry. Another ways to say it is that it's a hands-on, high accountability, high grace laboratory for passionate people of faith to experiment with neighboring where they live. And so we love that like language of experimentation and laboratory because this is a journey. We're all learning and we're kind of learning and practicing together. And that gets into this next part here, that this is an ecumenical community of care and practice. So we have had the privilege already in just our really small first cohort to attract people that were United Methodists. I'm bringing my perspective as a member of the Disciples of Christ, Christian Church Disciples of Christ. We've had, we've had a couple of Catholics. We've had evangelicals. We've had people from the Church of God in Christ. Even some interest from the Church of Christ that didn't pan out for that particular individual just based on his schedule. But the point is we're attracting this like real diversity of people of faith, which is really cool. And we're creating this community of care and practice. We're caring for each other. We're saying this is countercultural work to go out into our neighborhoods and neighbor. And so it requires us to cheer each other on, to hold each other accountable, and take good care of each other, and then go out and actually practice the work. So I just wanted to share some comments from some past animators. So this one here, Alex, said, this cohort has honestly completely changed my perception of myself and my gifts. I had to step outside of my comfort zone, and it made me realize that I am really good at hosting. I am good at talking to people. I am good at creating community. What a gift. And then we also had a United Methodist pastor named Ray, who became an animator as well. And he said, I am more convinced than ever that my neighborhood is bursting with potential and gifts/assets. So those are the kind of things that we're aiming towards. And it was heartening to hear that those animators had that experience. So who should apply in this cohort? So again, we're talking about, you'll hear us use the word passion a lot. We need people who are deeply passionate about neighboring around their homes with their literal immediate neighbors. And we emphasize that passion because there's a lot of baby steps that people can take, and we take you through those baby steps. It's a journey, again, countercultural, but we need people that are willing to dive in for this cohort because of that community of care and practice that we're trying to hold to a high standard together. But we also are wanting both individuals and church teams. So your church can form a team and send multiple animators through the program. No prior neighboring experience is necessary. So if you know 0 neighbors, you're fine, you're good. It's just about that high dedication, that willingness to step out of your comfort zone, to be accountable, and of course, to both give and receive high amounts of grace because we're learning together. This is a paid job. And so, it's kind of a stipend level, not a huge amount of money, but we do kind of see it as a job. And so we want people who are ready to step into that and who are ready to be in this immersive context, and also to do it for 14 weeks in kind of a continual way. And we ask for 5 hours of commitment a week. Let's get into the role of churches. And again, feel free, if questions come up, feel free to type them in the chat as we go. But for churches, we're talking about this as an opportunity to really embrace being missional and incarnational for churches that want to immerse heavily in a context, in a real in grassroots neighborhoods. So this is for people that, for churches that are attracted to the idea of really making a difference beyond their walls. And for people who think that reciprocal relationships with neighbors around the homes of where their members live is an important part of being the church in this changing context of the 21st century church, when maybe not everybody's going to be coming into our church. I mean, churches are continuing to lose membership, but there are still people who really want to be loved on and to love and to experience love in action in their neighborhoods, where that's where people are. People live in the neighborhood, right? We're looking for churches to kind of put together some teams of send us basically 3 to 5 passionate and dedicated members. And then, each church can kind of do this in your own way, but we really love the church to think of these people as being sent out, in partnership with us. We're sending these animators. And so we would love to invite you to bless and commission them, and then celebrate them in whatever way that makes sense in your context. And then we also like for people that maybe don't have the ability to dive so deep into this immersive 14-week animator role, we still want the rest of the church to come alongside them. And so we'd invite churches to form an accountability team of supportive members and clergy who believe in this idea, and want to be like cheerleaders for these animators, and help check in with them and make sure that they're doing their tasks, and of course be grace givers, knowing that this is strenuous and exciting work and everything in between. And then we'd also love for animators to share their key learnings in periodic workshops and activities with the rest of the church, so that animators come to us, they learn, they take it back to their church, and then maybe some of those people become animators again in the future, and we can start to kind of build a culture. There's no cost to churches. We want to really emphasize that. And then we really believe that when passionate people are well-resourced, they're loved on, they're held accountable, and they're given the freedom to fail and to try new things, that these people will have long-term impacts in the congregation, around the congregation, and in the neighborhoods. So there's kind of three focuses of this cohort. The first is that we're using this book called The Connected Community, and it's an incredible book all about discovering the hidden, well, I think the subtitle is Discovering the Health, Wealth, and Power of Neighborhoods. And it's not necessarily wealth as in monetary, but wealth as in the hidden gifts and assets. And we want to put that book in conversation with Scripture, in conversation with our lives of faith, and then in conversation with our neighborhood experiences. So that'll be a big portion. But then we're also spending a lot of time building trust with our neighbors, building relationships, to the point that we can do this second thing here, this learning conversations. These are conversations where you're actually going to be sitting down with neighbors for like an hour at a time and hearing, like asking them questions that are designed to draw out their hidden gifts. And a lot of times people have never had somebody sit down with them for an hour and hear their stories and hear what they're passionate about, hear what their dreams are for the neighborhood. So that can be a really amazing experience for people. And it's definitely amazing for our animators. And they'll kind of discover these gifts that everybody has, and they'll start mapping them into an asset map. And that's a big portion of this as well. And then also they're going to put on a block gathering. And we say that this is intentional block gathering because it's not just, just grilling out and having fun, although that can be part of it. It doesn't have to be a big blowout block party. It can just be a real small gathering of a few neighbors, but we want it to be intentional, really aimed at building relationships, furthering connections, and helping people see the abundance that's present in their neighborhood. So our theory, this is kind of the way we think about all of this. So we're building on the groundwork laid by a program that the neighboring movement has been doing for some time now. It's actually a secular program called the Community Animator Network, which, of course, itself was inspired by our faith-based work with congregations, our Good Neighbor Experiment, which is another program that we have. But we're building off of this, and then we're adding some faith-based components that we think are really crucial. We know that we're called to love our neighbor as ourselves, but we always try to remind people that the neighbors that we're supposed to love is always going to include more than our literal immediate neighbor, but it can never include less. And we actually say that loving our neighbor starts next door, because those are the people that we live around, and that's the neighbors in our immediate context. And we believe, though, that God has gifted all of our neighbors. Everybody has all sorts of hidden gifts, and our focus is on nurturing what's strong in our neighborhoods instead of focusing on what's wrong. We also see the role of the Spirit is weaving life together, and that we're called to be co-weavers. And we're taking stock of God's gifts through these asset maps and visualizing these gifts. And then we're using these maps to mobilize neighbors towards common dreams. And then finally, we believe that connected communities counter the isolation and polarization that we're really seeing as plaguing our context right now. These communities prefigure the loving world that God wants for us, where everyone's gifts play a part. And then another crucial point of like how we see this is we talk in terms of covenantal commitment. We're establishing a covenantal commitment to our neighborhoods, to their people, to the places, to ecology, and the associations of the neighborhood. And so, of course, when we're talking about covenant, we're talking about these thick and thin, deep relationships of radical presence. But we also talk about that that covenant as a responsibility that weaves through all parts of neighborhood life. So that could be welcoming new people well. That could be tending to our relationships that we have while we're there in our neighborhoods. But it also recognizes that sometimes we have to move on from a neighborhood. Life takes us in new places. And so it's not that you have to stick in the neighborhood for the rest of your life. It just means that when you leave, you also recognize you have that responsibility to your neighbors. And so you try to connect people together. You try to offload gifts in a good way. You try to, or offload connections in a good way so that people are stronger. The culture is stronger than when you left it. Because oftentimes when somebody leaves, especially someone that's played a crucial role in something, the energy dies, the trust dies. And we say, how can you leave in a good way? And so we actually have had a couple of animators say, hey, I'm really interested in what y'all are doing, but I want to move. I have, I'll tell a story of Alex. She knew she was going to be moving streets. Probably she was thinking kind of like at the end of the fan cohort, and she knew that she would have to have a gathering on her block and all this stuff. And she was like, I don't know if I should do this. Maybe I should wait until after I move. And I kind of told her, look, do it, like, try it now, because you'll get to have double the impact. You'll be able to build a culture or help sustain a culture, and connect people together so that they're more connected by the time you leave. So you can leave it better than you found it, but you also gain skills and practices that you take back onto your own blocks, or I mean, to the new place that you're moving. And so she did that. She embraced it. And here's what she said. She sent me a message after her gathering, and she said, it went so well. 11 people total were there, more than I expected. Everyone was so happy. At first, they were nervous and seemed weird that I was going to make them do this thing, which is like our head, hands, heart activity that we have people do. But once we got going, everyone loved it and got excited to talk. Then everyone stayed and played games. Everyone stayed an extra hour and didn't want to leave. I had to gently wrap things up. They all told me they were so happy I did it. Everybody signed up for the neighborhood text chain too. So she kind of goes on to talk about one interaction she had at the gathering with the oldest man on the block, who told her, I've lived here since 1950, and this is how it used to be. I've missed this. And then also she actually had, on top of the fact that she knew she might be moving, right before her gathering, she had like really one of the worst weeks of her life. But she decided she asked me, should I continue to have the gathering? And I said, hey, you have already made a huge difference here. You've already built a really cool culture. If you don't have the gathering, if you need to take care of yourself, you've made a difference already. And she just said, I'm going to do it anyway. And so here's what she said. She said, I'm glad I didn't bail. Everything's been so hard that I felt overwhelmed by this, but it ended up being exactly what I needed. And then she went on to describe these connections that she made that brought people together. There were two neighbors who kind of had like poor first impressions of one another. And through this gathering, she was able to get them talking, and they started to humanize each other, and they even challenged some prejudices they had about each other. So again, she could have bailed on this, or not even bailed. She could have just not done the program because she knew she was going to move, but she decided, I'm going to commit to this place and these people. I know I have plans to move on for the future, but I'm just going to set the stage so that connections can grow here. And now, she's had a second gathering, and another neighbor offered to host the next time. And so now it can kind of have life even after she moves on, which is really cool. Okay, so this is a little thing I put together to talk about fan by the numbers. So our CAN cohort, the secular cohort, we've had 10 of those cohorts with more than 90 graduates since 2020. And then we just started FAN, so we've only had one cohort that wrapped in September 2024. We had 5 graduates. We paid them $15 an hour stipend for up to 5 hours of work per week. These animators, through learning conversations and just talking to people a little bit less formally, discovered 120 previously hidden gifts. They held 6 neighbor gatherings between them, and they spent 27.25 hours having these learning conversations with 25 different neighbors. And so, yeah, you can kind of get a sense from there just how immersive this is. And let's take a look at the schedule. So again, the cohort lasts 14 weeks. So we are going to try having 2 in-person sessions this year, and 12 of those are going to be online. Animators work up to 5 hours a week, and they're building neighbor relationships. They're doing the readings from the book. They're posting discussions online. And so we kind of start with introducing this big countercultural topic, which we try to move slowly and at the speed of trust with our neighbors and in our courses. And so a lot of that beginning part is just building their presence and their familiarity and trust in the neighborhood, so that people just, I mean, it's not even they have to spend that much time talking to anybody, especially if you're joining a winter, like a January cohort. This is time that it's more about just building some sort of familiarity where people can kind of, recognize who you are. Lots of different ways to do that. And then as you kind of build that confidence, then you kind of are more immersive. We're also introducing them to these ideas of ABCD and covenantal neighboring. Then we have the in-person gathering. That's around like week 7 or so. And right around that time, maybe a couple weeks before, maybe just around that time, they'll be learning how to have learning conversations, which again are a very intentional type of conversation. And they'll start doing those, and that will carry on for most of the rest of the cohort. And they'll begin planning their block gatherings, finding an ally on their street who can help them do the gathering, those types of things. And then as they wrap up, they will, like the kind of last part of the cohort is curating the asset map from those conversations, from the gifts they discover. They're giving care to neighbors, but also learning how to receive care from neighbors, which is a really countercultural thing in the Midwest and where I'm from in Texas. Everybody wants to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, which is fine, but we're trying to build community here. And then we learn a little bit about bystander intervention, just very briefly, kind of talking about there's always going to be conflict when you're engaged in community with people, and so how to handle that a little bit. And then they'll be hosting their gathering. And finally, they'll have the in-person finale where they present their asset map and share a little bit about how their gathering went, or wrap up some of the things if they haven't quite gotten to it yet. So goals and outcomes, there's so much. It was hard for me to actually narrow it down to this slide, which, I had all these little check boxes and I wanted to make it look nice and even. So who knows if these are like the perfect ways to describe them, but we're definitely going to be increasing neighbor relationships in number and depth. You're going to be identifying God's abundance in the gifts of your neighbors, laying the groundwork for a neighboring culture and identity in your church. And that's huge. And there's lots of ways that you can kind of further explore that. Cultivate a neighborly culture on your block that has staying power. And that's a huge part of it as well. We don't want this all to just disappear. Exponentially increase the missional reach of God's love and action, not just kind of within the walls of the church, but really, going outward. And then creating an asset map to visualize gifts, inspire connections, and mobilize for the common good. And that asset map tool will mostly in this cohort be focused around the blocks where people live. But it's something that we have tons of resources on, and it can be very easily adapted in and around your church too. In fact, a week from now, I'm doing a workshop within a church, helping them build their asset map, and then they'll be taking those skills that they learn and then going out to their neighbors and having learning conversations and expanding their asset map to include the neighbors around the church building as well. Last little bit, I just kind of wanted to focus on what a neighboring team looks like. So a neighboring team is 3 to 5 people from your church, and each will apply separately. And I know that might feel a little bit weird, but we really want to make sure that we have people that really can be passionate and dive into the work. And so, and we want to make sure that we have like a good culture of animators all together. we encourage others in the church to become future animators, or of course, to be a part of the accountability team. And that's what animators will, or people on the neighboring team will be looking and helping to identify who those potential future animators are. They'll be encouraged to share their learnings with the church through head, hands, or like an example is like this head, hands, heart activity I've mentioned. Asset mapping, we have like 8 front door workshops, and they can share some of that with the church so that the church can be diving into neighboring, maybe less immersive, but still doing it. Then they'll be participating in regular sessions once a week. They'll be doing their mini experiments as kind of homework. They'll be having one-on-ones with coaches and meeting with their accountability team at the church. And then they might also decide, you know, hey, since there's several of us in this church together, let's do this as a team. We'll do our homework together. We'll discuss the book together. You know, they can kind of, animators in the church will be participating as part of this team with other people, as like the part of the cohort with other individuals, maybe some affiliated with a specific church and some just kind of as individuals, but they can also work together as a team. Who should we recruit? So we're talking about laity or staff from your church. Again, there's that word, that passionate about spending 14 weeks diving deep into hyperlocal neighboring. People that are natural connectors, those that seem to know everybody. You might have some people in mind already, like, oh, that person, how do they do it? You know, and or somebody who might want to cultivate that, right? People who live near the church building could be really useful. They don't have to, but then you kind of get, they're neighboring around their homes. They're also neighboring around the church. That's a really good connection. And then individuals who respond well to accountability, who have this kind of missional mindset, and who are willing to step out of their comfort zone. And again, that doesn't say anything about individuals who already know a ton of neighbors. Although if you knew someone, that'd be cool too. Last, I just wanted to close with a couple of quotes. So here's Ray again talking about what it was like to have a learning conversation. He said, I had a learning conversation today, and what struck me the most was how emotional my neighbor got talking about the things and people he cared about. I've known him for 2 years, and by focusing on him and asking simple questions that delved a little deeper, I saw that his heart is on his sleeve way more than I imagined. I feel like I know him better, not just because of what he shared, but how the conversation revealed a part of him I didn't know before. Sacred moment for sure. And then here's another small testimony from another animator who said, Fan has made me open back up to my faith and has honestly allowed me to see God moving again when for the longest time in my life, I felt a very big disconnect there. So I hope that gives you a little bit of an overview. I know that's a ton of information. We'll make sure that this slide is shared with you. But I think now we can kind of open it up for general discussion. I don't know if Dashanika had any specific way to do that, but I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah, no, we can just go ahead. Thank you so much, Ian, for sharing about FAN. So this time we can ask Ian some questions about what he has shared with you all. And so, yeah, if you guys have any questions, please unmute yourself and just have a conversation.
You can also use the chat.
Yeah, you can also use the chat if you're feeling kind of shy. That's fine too.
Or if you're having mic issues.
Yeah, are you having tech issues? Right. You can also, if you have any questions about the Healthy Congregations program, I can also answer that as well. So, or anything else you guys may have.
Yep.
Yeah.
And also our contact info is open. So, you know, anytime you, if you need to ponder things, sometimes questions or thoughts or comments don't all come at once, but if you need to ponder things and ask that, reach out to us. And that way always are welcome to do that.
Yes, I'm going to put my email address in the chat box here. And my email address is just my first name at healthfund.org. So pretty easy to remember. There you guys go.
Yep. And mine's similar. Ian at neighboringmovement.org.
Oh, I see a question. Do you have a theme or topic for the retreat? No, we do not have a theme or topic quite yet. We're a little bit away. We just have the date solidified and the location. But I can share, 'cause we did have a meeting yesterday to talk more about the retreat and just some things that we can bring to you guys. I think that we're kind of leaning towards, we definitely want to give more of a deeper and richer spiritual experience for you all. So we do want to talk about we do want to provide you guys a more like a more enriched spiritual experience. And so we're not sure what that looks like yet, but we're just wanting to make sure that we are connecting kind of like our why of why we do this work, which is like as believers, you know, we care about neighbors, we care about compassion, we care about respecting each other, loving each other, love a big theme. And so these are some of our like fundamental beliefs. And so we're wanting to incorporate our why more into this retreat. And so I can share a little bit of that. That's kind of like the framework we're kind of going for. Yeah. That's a great question. Any other questions about FAN or anything?
Ian, this may be in some of the emails we've already exchanged, and I apologize if it is, but timeline for applying for the January cohort?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So it's amazing how quickly it comes up, because yeah, I don't think I have like a very specific deadline set. But really my hope was that people would apply like before Advent, which I think is December 1st. And so I know that's coming pretty quick. If someone were to like before, like I would say between now and the first week of December, it would be really nice to have all applications in.
Okay.
Because yeah, Christmas break and all that stuff will be coming up, and just all sorts of church stuff. So yeah.
Very good.
Well, if there are no more questions, we'll go ahead and close us out. Um, If questions do come up later, again, please feel free to email Ian or me, and we can get that information over to you. The recording will be on our Health Fund website and as well as on G&E, and the PowerPoints will be there as well. Thank you both for coming, and we appreciate your time that you spent with us, and have a great week.
Yeah, thanks so much, y'all. Wish you all the best. Enjoy the rest of your week, and hopefully we'll talk soon.
Yes.